Good evening. It's so crazy to be on this stage with you all. And like Tarek, I'm going to try not to get emotional. At PAD, we have this saying, which you'll find in a lot of communities that do harm reduction, and that is that we meet people where they are. We meet our people where they are. And so I want to say to you all, supporters of the Southern Center, that the way that I came to become a friend and a client of the Southern Center is because Palmer Singleton came into Arendelle State Prison, and that's where I was. He met me where I was. So that means a lot to me, and it had a huge impact on me. Obviously, now I'm in law school, and that's something that I didn't think would be a part of my path, but it has become a part of my path and a really important one. I was coming up for parole in 2016 when Palmer met with me, and I knew that I had opposition to that, like so many people do. And unlike a lot of people in the prison around me, I have been very fortunate to have a really huge, loving, supportive family and lots of community support. I had all these resources. Those resources let me do things like argue to get to the transitional center where I could finish my master's degree. Those helped me to do things like, go to the law library every day and do some jailhouse lawyering and help some other people who weren't able to afford counsel to have some success in their cases. So that's very important. That's an important thing for me to remember because not everybody has that support. And that's where people like Palmer and Mark Loudon Brown come in and provide that friendship and that understanding of what injustice looks like and where we can make those corrections in our communities. So Palmer was, I'm not going to go too much into this because Steve is going to speak about Palmer, but, Palmer was a little rough around the edges. And I remember coming in, telling him everything about me and my case the first time, and then I told him all of the bad stuff, He was super upfront and realistic, and so was I, and I just wanted to get to the chase and let him know everything that he was up against. And, at the end of that, I pretty much said, "What do you think we should do, Palmer?" And he said, "I don't know, but we'll figure it out." And he was pretty confident about that. And then he got out of there pretty quick because I was keeping him from his pipe, you see. Anyway, my entry point to understanding the criminal legal world was sort of rooted with this indifference of paid trial attorneys who didn't care about me or my family. And when I say that my experience was different, that's really where the difference began. But it really made me understand how what they were doing was rooted in this, this practice of making industry off of people's lives, off of our backs. And that's only a small part of what I came to understand later when I was actually inside. And I had to live through retaliation for trying to do things that I could read plainly in the policies that I had a right to do and things like that. So, it started at the beginning. And I really, I'm going to start reading my notes. I really think it's important for me that I met Mark and that I met Palmer and that I met Steve Bright. And I got to know people who were really doing the good work in the legal field. Because I had a really bad taste in my mouth, And that went with me, that carried with me. It carries with me to the point where as a law student, I get emails from people at the state bar who refuse to hear my grievances, which I know had good merit, And so it means a lot to me to know that we have people in our community who are doing the complete opposite of that. And that's what we need. And that's why I decided to go to law school, frankly. One thing about it, too, is we have to inject our expertise into this field, okay? This is my lived experience, and this is my expertise. I think that it's incredible that, you know, Paige and Walisha and Patrick and Nikki are part of this community. You know, we're driving this community with our expertise. That is what we bring to the table, and that is something that is so critical. And I really applaud the Southern Center for seeing that, and I feel like we're on to something here, you know. I was talking to Nikki just last week, and she said something to me that really, you know, that really defined it in a nutshell. Nikki, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but she said, I understand you because I am you. Because I am you. So when we talk about understanding that injustice, and we talk about understanding people because we are them, that's what drives me. That's what makes me want to be a lawyer. I want to be able to say that to my clients and have them know that I really understand. So I can't thank Mark and Sarah enough for the advocacy that they put forth to get me out, to get me here. I was just released in February. It was a really long, thank you. The real people you should think are my mom and my sister sitting in the back, and Paige Dukes sitting in the front. As anybody who has ever had a loved one inside or a friend knows, you know, you're going through it with us, and people need to realize the gravity of that. And that is how this injustice affects our entire communities. That is how injustice spreads. So I thank them for that. But I feel so much solidarity with the Southern Center because of the work that Mark and Sarah did to help put the pieces in place for me to be here today. And also, just to think about what I learned from Mark, how he worked with me as a client. I had never worked with an attorney. You know, I was the bad client. I was the client that nobody wanted because I wanted to have my hands in everything. I was writing the motions, I was sending cases, you know. So that turned people off, but it didn't turn Mark off, and I really learned a lot from him because of that. So anyway, I won't take up too much more of your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this wonderful organization. And next up is a man who probably needs no introduction at all, but I can't even believe I'm introducing you, Steve. I started watching Steve's courses on the death penalty that Yale had posted on the site when I was at a transitional center, and it was looking like I wasn't going to be able to start law school. You know, the DOC was just never approving that for me. But Palmer said, you need to check out Steve's courses, you know, and that was the first time that there was some intersection between what I was doing and learning in the law library in a prison and what Steve was teaching from a very, very practical standpoint in an academic setting. So I appreciated that. I appreciated the opportunity to meet with Steve and Mark before the pandemic started while I was at the transitional center. That was really important to me. But now, without further ado, I give you Mr. Steve Bright, the former president and senior attorney of the Southern Center for Human Rights.